Welcome to Dramas, Dreams, and Drollery. I am Mark, the author of all works that appear on this channel. India, a granddaughter, is my technical assistant. Please understand that I retain copyright to all of my material, which you may enjoy without payment, but which you may not use without my permission. Today I have for you a short story entitled The Challenge. Because it's quite long, I shall present only the first half today. The second half will be offered next time. Okay, here is part one. A strong gust of wind hit Tom on the face as he turned the corner onto Wilshire Boulevard. Instinctively, the hand that wasn't holding the Time magazine shot up to smooth his long black hair over the bald spot. Soon it dropped down to his side. Why bother in this blustery weather? Walking along the Miracle Mile sidewalk, Tom thought about that bald spot. He had discovered it recently while shaving. At age 45, wasn't he too young to be bald? His dad had not lost hair until his 60s. And what did Helen think? So far, not a word from her. Maybe she hadn't noticed yet. Should he buy some Rogaine or one of those other hair-restoring products they advertise on TV? In the window of Alvarado's, the thermometer read 73 degrees. Tim wished that his folks back in New York could enjoy California weather. According to the weather report, they were experiencing snow. Inside the restaurant, the aroma of garlic and onions made his mouth water. He noted the familiar faces of regular lunchtime customers, Koreans, Mexicans, Anglos, and blacks, typical LA. But today, more people than usual. Normally, by 2 o'clock, most customers were back at their jobs in the adjacent office buildings. The only vacant seat Tom could locate was at a table for two near a street window. A large, athletic black man occupied the other seat. Mind if I sit here? Tom asked. Oh, not at all, replied the black man with a smile. Tom sat down and placed the magazine on the table. The black man resumed eating his meal of tamales, beans, and rice. Looking out the window, Tom remarked, "Nice day, but a little windy." With a mouthful of food, his companion simply nodded. "I'm Tom Shapiro. I work at Spider." Tom extended his hand. The black man swallowed, and the two men shook hands. "Jim Stevens. I'm the director of Our Place, an orphanage around the corner." "Sorry, but I don't think I've heard of Spider." Well, the word spider is formed by combining the words sustain, preserve, defend, and renew. We're a small environmental organization. Los Angeles is our headquarters, but we have projects going in India and Bolivia. I really love my job. I don't think there's anything more important in the world today than protecting the environment. Man is destroying planet Earth. I'm fortunate to be in a position where I can. "Here's a menu, sir," interjected a short, plump waitress with stringy blonde hair. Oh, I don't need a menu. Just bring me number 2 combo. That's what I generally order. And a Coke." "Yes, sir." Jim drank some iced tea, and then he said, "You're right, saving planet Earth is important work, but I think I have a pretty important job too. I run an orphanage. We've got 37 kids, from infants to teenagers. There are only 10 of us to do the whole job. It's hard work." "How'd you get into that business?" "Well, it's something I'd have wanted to do all my life. You see, I was an orphan myself. My father abandoned the family when I was 5. My mother became an alcoholic. She died when I was 10. They sent me to a miserable orphanage, but there was one wonderful lady there, Martha Burton. I owe everything to her. She told me I was smart and she encouraged me to read. When I was 16, she got me into Upward Bound. That's a federal program to help disadvantaged kids get into college. Martha knew what she was doing. College changed my outlook on life. It gave me the self-confidence that I'd been lacking. I vowed to help other disadvantaged kids. For 5 years, I taught in a public school and saved nearly every penny I earned. Then 6 years ago, I rented a building nearby and started Our Place. I love what I'm doing, but it's a struggle. Sorry, I guess I'm talking too much. You've probably got to get back to work soon. No problem. I haven't even eaten yet. Anyway, I don't need to be back in the office until 4 today. A large group at a nearby table got up and left the restaurant. The waitress brought Tom's food. Here's your combo number 2 and your Coke. Would you like anything else? No thanks, that's fine. As Tom bit into a taco, Jim asked, So what does Spider do in India and Bolivia? Quite a few things. We teach local farmers how to grow crops efficiently. We encourage the protection of forests, waterways, and wildlife. And we participate in reforestation projects. Are you familiar with solar ovens? Tom shook his head. They're simple devices that allow poor people to use the sun's energy for cooking instead of burning wood. We distribute those ovens wherever possible. Like your orphanage, Spider is changing people's lives, but we're doing it globally. This remark caused Jim's competitive juices to flow. Well, even if we work on a small scale, our product is people. Your work concerns land, forest, water. There's nothing more important than shaping human lives. You misunderstand. We change lives too. Spider's work has widespread impact. If we don't succeed, there may be no world in which orphanages can exist. A thin elderly man in a suit stood up from an adjacent table and approached the two men. He looked pale and tired. Gentlemen, I hope you'll pardon the intrusion. Sitting at the next table, I could not fail to overhear your conversation. What you were saying inspired me. If you will give me a few minutes of your time, I promise to offer something irresistible. He paused as if catching his breath. Tom and Jim looked at one another. Jim shrugged his shoulders. You're not selling something, are you? Asked Jim. Oh, no, said the man with a little laugh. Then go ahead, said Jim. For a very good reason, I do not wish to reveal my name, but you will surely want to call me something, so you may refer to me as Mr. Peters. There are 2 facts that you need to know about me. First, I am an extremely wealthy man with homes and bank accounts in several countries. Second, I am an avid sportsman. I love spirited competition between worthy opponents. As I listened to you gentlemen talk, I said to myself, here are 2 fine, intelligent people, both passionately trying to improve the world. That's really splendid. I admire people of that sort. But the situation presents an unusual opportunity for me to enjoy the thrill of competition. I don't get what you're driving at, said Jim. Oh, just humor me a bit longer. All will be clear soon. Peters began to cough hard. Tom pulled up a chair for him from an adjoining table. Jim got the waitress to fetch a glass of water. 2 or 3 minutes passed before the man could resume talking. I should like to offer the two of you a rare challenge. Participation will not disrupt your work at all. On the contrary, you must continue to serve your causes. But the quality of your endeavor must rise to a new and lofty level. I will allow 1 year's time for this contest. Today is October 18. If both of you agree to take part, on October 18 next year, whoever of you has advanced his cause the most will receive from me a prize of $1 million. The loser will receive nothing. I shall be the sole judge of the contest. At the time of the award, no criticisms or appeals will be accepted. My word will be final, and I will not explain how I arrived at my decision. Just know that a man of my wealth has many people and resources to help him render a just verdict. Peters put his hand to his mouth as if stifling a cough. Are you serious about this? Asked Tom. I certainly am, replied Peters. Wow, that's incredible, said Jim. But how do we know that you are the person you claim to be? Anyone can claim to be wealthy. I could understand your skepticism, but consider this. If I were not sincere, what possible motive could I have for concocting such a story? Moreover, what do you have to lose for believing me? Peters coughed. You'll continue to do the work you enjoy, but perhaps with added zeal. Regardless, I intend to give each of you $10,000 now as an act of good faith. Additional effort on your part may entail additional expenses. The $10,000 should alleviate the burden somewhat. I won't give you more because I don't want to buy improvements. I want the gains to come from your personal efforts. One last point before I hear your response to my offer. For a good reason, there will be no written contract. You'll simply have to trust me. The two men looked at one another without speaking. Finally, Jim said, Sure, I'll agree to this. And then Tom said, I'd like to talk to my wife. Sorry, said Peters, but I need your answer now. Why do you need to consult your wife? Nothing in your life will change, except that you will work harder. Tom nodded slowly before saying, Sure, why not? Peters signaled to the waitress. May we have 2 pencils and 2 pieces of paper, please? As the woman went to comply, the old man addressed his companions again. When she returns, I want both of you to write down for me your full names, your places and dates of birth, the addresses of your workstations, and the names and addresses of your financial institutions. By Friday, I shall deposit the $10,000 into your individual accounts at the places you have named. If you doubt my legitimacy, you can wait for Friday's deposit before you begin to act. But if you believe me, you may gain an advantage on your opponent by beginning as soon as you leave the restaurant. After the men had provided the required information, Peter said, Now the rules of the contest. Tom and Jim looked at each other. Oh yes, there are rules. Every contest has rules, you know. Don't bother to write them down. You will receive a copy of them along with the money on Friday. The first rule is that you are to make no attempt to learn my identity. The second rule is that after today, you will make no effort to communicate with your opponent or to learn more about him or his work. The third rule is that you will do nothing to thwart or influence the work of your opponent. The fourth rule forbids you to tell anyone about the contest. The fifth and final rule requires that you take no action in anticipation of victory. For example, you may not borrow or pledge anything against the $1 million that you might win. Are these rules clear to you? The two men nodded. Good. Before we go our separate ways, I want you to understand something. Obey the rules rigidly, whether or not you think that I will learn of violations. Let me assure you that I have vast resources at my command. My people will monitor your activity, and my people are very thorough. A single violation of the rules will result in immediate disqualification. Expect no further contact from me until we meet again to award the prize. Peters looked at his watch. That meeting will take place in this restaurant at 3 p.m. on October 18th, 1998. Have you any questions? There was no response. Fine. Let us shake hands on the agreement. All shook hands. Officially, the contest begins this very moment. To comply with the rules, you will need to separate at once. Unfortunately, for the next year, at least one of you will need to patronize a different restaurant at lunchtime. Oh, Tom can come here if he wants. Eating at Alvarado's today was an aberration for me. I normally have lunch in the orphanage. All right then, said Peters. I bid you gentlemen farewell. Good luck. Although he remained in Alvarado's another half hour, Tom ate only 2 more bites of taco and a few sips of Coke. The rice and enchiladas grew cold before he abandoned them. His mind wasn't on food. It was on replaying the encounter over and over. Each replay brought new and vexing questions. Who was this Peters? Did he truly possess great wealth? Would a person of ordinary means invent such a story? Would an affluent sportsman give away $1 million on a whim? Was there anything about the man's appearance or manner that might answer these questions? Did he detect a slight English accent in the man's speech? Was Peters ill? He looked frail and he coughed several times. How Tom wished he had looked out the restaurant window to see what kind of car Peters drove. Maybe the waitress could tell him. But if he asked her, he would violate rule number 1. Better not risk it. The afternoon passed quickly. Tom accomplished less than usual in the office. He was dying to tell Helen and the boys about their good fortune, but he didn't dare. Another of those rules violations. Besides, the boys couldn't keep a secret like that. After dinner, he had the usual struggle with Ben and Paul over their homework. It was 8:30 before they were seriously at work, and Helen had finished the dishes. Tom took his wife into the bedroom. Even if he couldn't tell her the whole truth, he could enlist her services in the cause so long as he proceeded discreetly. 2 heads were better than 1, and Helen had a good head. They sat on the bed. Helen, I'd like your help with something. I want to do my job much more efficiently than I'm doing at present. From what I've told you over the years, you should have a pretty clear idea of Spider and of my position in it. Oh, Tom, they aren't thinking of letting you go, are they? No, nothing like that. It's just, as I said, I want to do a much better job. Over the next couple of days, think about the problem and make a list of whatever pops into your head. I know you can be creative. Give me a few good ideas for improvement of the organization, or my role in it. All right, but are you sure you're not holding something back from me? Well, I've told you all that I can say at this time. Just believe that your labor can be important to us, but do not worry. My job is not at risk. With his normal long, swift strides, Jim negotiated the 7 blocks from Alvarado's to our place in 9 minutes, despite the gusts of winds that battered his body. En route, he analyzed and synthesized all the elements of his extraordinary experience, but immediately upon entering the office, he put the episode out of his mind, or rather, the stiff blasts of the street yielded to the whirlwind of the orphanage. Eldon, a veteran employee, had broken up a fight between Jeff and Eugene. Now he was sitting between the combatants, awaiting the return of the director. Verbal sparks were still flying, with each boy accusing the other of initiating the fight, and with Eldon unable to confirm either story. Jim withdrew their television privilege for a week and ordered the participants to draw up a plan for the peaceful resolution of future conflicts. This incident made the director a few minutes late for an appointment with a salesman from the Linen Plus Company. After that meeting, Jim had to return the 3 phone calls that had come in while he was at the restaurant. Minutes after dealing with the callers, a crisis occurred in the kitchen. Sheila and Manuel, the cooks, had accidentally flavored the beans for the evening meal with excessive hot sauce. The kids would refuse to eat them, and there was no suitable replacement in stock. With only an hour before dinner, the cooks were exchanging accusations instead of dealing with the problem. Jim managed to quell the argument and then gave Sheila some money to buy carrots at the store. The kids would have raw carrots with their meal. Only after 7 o'clock, when he returned control of our place over to Ellie, did Jim's thoughts return to the challenge that he had accepted. Driving to the home of Martha Burton for his usual Tuesday evening dinner, his mind churned the same questions that had agitated Tom's. There were a few differences. Jim hadn't detected an English accent in the stranger's voice, but he had one intriguing thought that had not entered Tom's mind. Jim had been a basketball star at UCLA, a walk-on who had become an All-American. If Peters was the sportsman he claimed to be, wasn't it likely that he knew Jim by reputation? Perhaps then the restaurant encounter had been pre-planned and not accidental. But why? Martha Burton lived in a quiet neighborhood of 60-year-old houses near Olympic Boulevard. She was older than those dwellings and in poor health. Though in constant pain from arthritis and gout, she never displayed suffering to Jim. A widow with no children, she treated the young man like a son. She didn't hesitate to praise or to scold. The scolding, jocular and motivational, almost always concerned Jim's bachelorhood. She said repeatedly, "You're 32. It's time to get married. By now, you ought to have a couple of kids." Jim just laughed. He knew that Martha meant well. Maybe she was right, but there was no one to marry. 7 days a week he spent his time at the orphanage or at the gym. He'd gone out with women only a few times since his college days, mostly blind dates arranged by his former teammates. He had dated a girl from the gym 2 or 3 times, but she had moved to Wisconsin. None of the relationships had lasted. The problem was Jim's conscience. He felt the full weight of responsibility for 37 children. The orphanage always took priority over personal matters. Lunch at Alvarado's that day had been intended as a respite from the relentless demands of the office. Now, as he greeted Martha with a kiss, Jim mentally resuscitated that singular experience. How he yearned to give his closest friend a full account. He envisioned Martha's reaction, her big smile, her excited voice, but he suppressed the urge. Self-control might be worth $1 million. Jim sat at the dining table while Martha brought the food from the kitchen. He wanted to help, but the woman always insisted on doing the job alone. To Martha, Tuesday night was the big event of the week. Planning the meal, preparing it, even cleaning up afterward brought her great joy. Tonight's dinner consisted of roast beef, mashed potatoes and gravy, a salad, and homemade apple pie. She knew that Jim would love it. Like his contest rival, Jim decided to tap the brain of the person he loved and trusted the most. While savoring the delicious meal, he attacked the problem indirectly. Martha, probably no one in the world knows orphanages better than you. Suppose that I wanted to redo our place from top to bottom. How would you advise me to proceed? Martha laughed. Why would you want to do that? You're doing a wonderful job right now. I know you're always a little short of money, but no one works harder than you or cares more for the children. Well, I'm not satisfied. I want to find ways to do much better. Please help me out, Martha. Between now and next Tuesday, think of everything you can that might improve our place. Will you do that for me? Of course, but there are human limits, you know. Don't push yourself too hard. Okay, but I'm not certain that I'm doing all that I can. Just think about it. All right. On Wednesday, neither man took decisive action to further his cause. The light of a new day had brought sober reflection. Could this really be true, they asked themselves. The chance encounter ending with an offer of $1 million seemed too fantastic to be credible. Jim nearly convinced himself that it was some sort of trick or joke. But what was the purpose? Just for a laugh? The absence of a plausible explanation left him with a faint ray of hope. Tom theorized that the challenge was a publicity stunt or a staged scenario for a TV comedy show. Hollywood was nearby. Perhaps in a couple of weeks he'd see himself on television. But wouldn't the producers of the program have to get his permission? Inevitably, both men concluded that the promise of $10,000 would be the true test of Peter's sincerity. Although their benefactor had named Friday as the day of action, the two men could not resist calling their banks on Thursday. They were disappointed to learn that no money had been deposited into their accounts. Thursday evening passed ever so slowly. Tom had great difficulty falling asleep. About 11 a.m. the next day, as he had requested, Tom received a call from his banker informing him that $10,000 had been placed in his account by electronic transfer. Though yearning to know the source of the money, he declined to press the caller on the issue. Jim learned the same good news half an hour later. So it was true, they thought. How incredible and how wonderful. They had to get to work at once. Over the weekend, Tom and Helen exchanged ideas. Tom began the discussion with the question, what are all the ways to advance environmentalism? After brainstorming, they divided their responses into two categories. 1, actions in the physical environment, and 2, support measures. Then they subdivided the first category into land, sea, and air components. The second category proved more intractable to analysis. Eventually, they agreed that the most valuable activity would be to win public opinion. A positive attitude toward the environment would lead people to contribute money, vote for environmental projects, and become personally involved in conservation work. And then Tom asked, what are the greatest impediments to the realization of these goals? Their answers were ignorance, apathy, and a lack of money, people, and resources. None of this was news to Tom. During his years with Spider, he had discussed the same issues over and over. But now he was in a contest for $1 million. He didn't want to overlook anything. Accordingly, Tom had Helen address the same questions to every environmental agency she could locate. With only a part-time job at an elementary school, Helen had spare time for this research. The Shapiro family, that is to say, the parental portion of it, was in a new mode and its engine was humming. But Tom worried about the other half of the family. Neither 10-year-old Paul nor 14-year-old Ben had been behaving well for some time. They constantly quarreled over personal possessions and rarely performed the household chores to which they were assigned. Recently, Ben's history teacher had called to report their son's frequent tardiness. Devoting more time and energy to winning $1 million might cost Tom and Helen their children. On Saturday morning at Gold's Gym, the sweat poured down Jim's face and body as he ran on the treadmill. Today, the half hour on the machine passed rapidly because his mind was focused on a single subject. What was the precise meaning of advance the cause the farthest? Advance how? In charitable contributions? In works performed? How does one compare apples to oranges? Is the advance to be judged on the basis of the organizations, our place versus Spider, or of the individuals, Jim versus Tom? Spider was much larger than our place, and its resources were much greater. If the comparison was per capita and not in the aggregate, he had a chance to win. Jim finally stopped speculating. There was no way for him to read the mind of Mr. Peters. He should forget Tom and just do his best. In the afternoon, Jim called Al Miller, a former basketball teammate. They agreed to play ball together Sunday afternoon. Jim was eager to talk to his old friend, a youth counselor in a disadvantaged neighborhood. Doing somewhat similar work, Al might give him some valuable advice. Between basketball shots and jokes, Jim extracted a few ideas from Al. As they parted, the former asked the latter to continue thinking about improvement of the orphanage. In the organizational hierarchy of Spider, Tom ranked number 3. The 63-year-old CEO, Brandon McMasters, was considering retirement. Bruce Peterson, the second in command, was 68. Everyone understood that he would be passed over when the time came to choose a successor to McMasters. Almost certainly the new CEO would be Tom or fourth-ranked Lorraine Davis, an energetic and attractive woman, only 41 years old, who knew how to use her charms with great effect. Tom actively pursued the top spot, but at every step he felt Lorraine's hot breath on his heels. On Monday, Tom called upon the 5 people who reported directly to him. He asked each to provide by Wednesday a list of at least 3 ways that Spider could improve. Then he spent an hour of his own time wrestling with the same problem. Tuesday's schedule precluded any effort to work on the challenge. In bed that evening, he had trouble falling asleep. He wondered what Jim was up to. The list Tom received on Wednesday disappointed him. Most suggestions were petty or unrealistic. For example, Janice proposed to raise money for environmental projects through a blood drive at Spider. Tom knew that wouldn't go over with the staff, and it wouldn't raise much money. Nevertheless, he thanked the woman for her idea and asked her to continue thinking about the problem. Din recommended the use of artificial rather than real trees in the office at Christmas time. Though minor, the proposal had some merit. Live trees would be spared. Perhaps wasn't it hypocritical for an environmental organization to use live trees that way? Tom made a note to implement the suggestion in December, and he notified Din of his action. During breakfast on Friday, an article of the Los Angeles Times captured Tom's attention. A French tourist in India had accidentally killed a cow with his rental car. The incident had triggered a riot, which resulted in 5 deaths and numerous injuries. Tom thought about the cultural divide between India and his own country. If a similar incident had occurred in California, some onlookers would have felt pity for the cow, but none would have killed in retribution. How could that rage and vindictive passion be channeled into a fight for conservation? On the way home that evening, Tom stopped at Barnes & Noble and purchased 2 books on Indian history and culture. On Monday the 24th, Jim met individually with every employee of our place. He asked them to propose new ideas for improving the orphanage. The person who could produce the most ideas within a week would receive dinner for 2 at Alvarado's and 2 tickets at the Edward Cinema. Reaction to the offer was swifter than expected. Even before interviewing the final employee, Jim had already received 2 suggestions. By Tuesday, our place was in disarray. Employees were abandoning their responsibilities and interrupting Jim's activities just to make a suggestion. In the afternoon, the director posted a notice advising the staff to put their ideas on paper and submit them to him the following Monday. On Tuesday, as usual, Jim went to Martha Burton's home for dinner. He hoped she had given serious thought to his request for advice. In this frame of mind, he was totally unprepared for the bombshell Martha tossed at him. It came during dinner. "Jim, I've been thinking hard about your orphanage." "Have you come up with anything?" "I think I have." "Let me ask you a question. What would be the greatest possible success that the orphanage could achieve?" "Well, I suppose that we reach a point at which every child is happy, well-clothed, well-fed, well-educated, and instilled with good values." "Wrong. It could be better than that." "How?" "It could be empty." "What do you mean?" "Picture a day when all 37 children have been adopted by caring parents." "Well, you're right. That would be better. But it's not possible." "Are you sure?" "I think it might be possible." "How hard have you tried?" "Well, I've made some efforts in that direction, but it's really difficult to find people willing to adopt children over the age of 5. Even the young ones with deformities or dark skin don't find homes." "I'm sure there's much truth in what you're saying, but I suspect you haven't made a maximum effort. There are good people everywhere who will overlook skin color or physical limitations." "I know you're right, Martha. You're living proof of that. I'll give it some thought." "Okay, but think big. 37 kids, 37 adoptions, that's perfection." The more Jim thought about Martha's words, the more excited he became. How could Peters not award him the prize if he eliminated the need for our place? On Thursday afternoon, he called Spencer, O'Donnell, and Gonzalez, a large advertising firm. He spoke to an executive named Mike Gutowski. Hello, my name is Jim Stevens. I'm the director of Our Place, an orphanage here in Los Angeles. We've been having little success in getting our kids adopted. I thought perhaps you could give me some advice on how to market a product. Sorry, but I'm terribly busy right now. I understand your problem and I can sympathize with you. I'll have to talk to you later. Give me your number and I'll call back when I can. Jim left his number, but he doubted Gutowski's sincerity. A man under pressure seemed unlikely to return unnecessary calls. However, the next day, just as Jim was considering whether to call another advertising agency or to seek advice elsewhere, the phone rang. It was Mike Gutowski. Sorry I couldn't deal with your problem yesterday, but I had a deadline to meet. Oh, I understand. Frankly, I thank you for getting back to me soon. As I remember, you want advice on how to market kids. That's correct. Well, I'm probably not the best person to consult. Our firm deals with products like soap and tobacco. You'd probably do better with firms that advertise people, like Levin Brothers, who represent film stars. But I'll give you some general advice. To sell his product, any advertiser tries to do two things. The first is exposure. You can get the public to like your product if they don't. You can't get the public to like your product if they don't know about it. So one way or another, you'll need to bring potential adopters to the orphanage, or you will have to take the kids to them. The second requirement is desire. You must get the public to want your product. Either they need it or they love it. In this case, since your merchandise is children, that's easy. People are going to love them. Sorry again, but in the little time that I have, that's about as well as I can do. Get the public to see the kids and have them fall in love with them. Thank you very much. You've given me something solid to think about. Goodbye. Goodbye and good luck. Tom was trying to sleep late on Saturday morning. He'd been up until nearly midnight on Friday, trying to finish a report that was due on the 1st of the month. The harried man hoped to have the weekend free so that he could read the books on India. Helen had gone to Trader Joe's for her weekly grocery shopping, but a terrible racket in the garage forced Tom out of bed. Ben and Paul were fighting over a bicycle. This was the bike that Helen's mother had unwisely given to the boys. Without a single owner, the gift was a constant source of trouble. When Tom reached the garage, Paul was lying on the floor and Ben was in possession of the bike. "He pushed me down," said Paul to his dad. "I did not. You fell down," retorted Ben. "What's going on?" asked Tom. "Are you fighting over the bike again?" "Mom said I could use it this morning," said Ben. "But I had it first," said Paul. "Did your mother really say that, Ben?" Tom inquired. "Yeah." "Okay. Did Paul have it first as he said?" "I guess, but I was supposed to have it this morning." "Did you explain that nicely to Paul before you took the bike, or did you just snatch it?" "Well, he just grabbed it," shouted Paul. The boys glared at each other. "Not knowing for sure what your mother said, I'm going to say that neither of you is to use it until she returns." "I'll take care of you later," said Ben to Paul as he set the bike against the garage wall. "Now, I don't want to hear that kind of talk," said Tom. "Think about what you learned last year when you prepared for the bar mitzvah. Leave Paul alone. Actually, both of you are supposed to clean up that mess in the backyard sometime this weekend. Now is probably as good a time as any. You won't be able to do it this afternoon. You can't miss Hebrew school again." The boys moved slowly away, grumbling as they moved. They didn't appear to be heading for the backyard. This recalcitrant behavior troubled Tom. He hadn't behaved that way when he was growing up. What could he do to alter their conduct? While Tom was trying to sleep late, Jim was getting his Saturday morning workout at Gold's Gym. He was going to make it short today. Preparations for Halloween hadn't been completed at the orphanage. This year, all the children from 3 to 12 would go trick-or-treating under the supervision of Ellie and Andy. There would be a party afterward. He and his friend Al Miller would take the older kids to a movie. Dinner at Martha's would have to be postponed, perhaps until Wednesday. Martha would understand, but he must not forget to call her. Jim's body bent and suffered on the ab, butterfly, and leg press machines, while his brain stretched itself on the rack of questions raised by the advertising man. How could he induce people to visit the orphanage? An open house? Would people come? How could he display the kids to appropriate viewers outside of our place? And how on earth did he have time to do such things when he already had all those other special occasions to prepare for, such as Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas? The bow that launched this arrow through his brain fired another in rapid succession. When Jim said to himself the word Christmas, his mind formed an image of children singing carols. At once he shouted out loud, "That's it!" People on adjacent machines looked suddenly at the speaker. Jim just gave an embarrassed smile. By the 1st of November, Tom had finished the 2 books on India. To learn more, he had checked out from the city library another entitled Eastern Religions. In the past, he had always had a hazy conception of Hinduism and Buddhism. Now Tom understood that Indians had great respect for life in all its forms. If only they appreciated the close connection between animal and vegetable life. To be more effective in India, perhaps Spider should show the people that it is their sacred duty to protect the environment. Presented that way, the work of Spider becomes an integral part of Indian culture. Tom discussed his idea with Narayan Mehta, a staff member from India. He also consulted a professor of psychology at USC, as well as the Indian-American owner of the Bengali restaurant. All agreed that the idea had merit. Mehta cautioned that the concept might be difficult to implement. The academic warned that the plan could backfire. If employed improperly, it could turn people against Spider. The risk was in the villages, but not the cities. At Tom's request, Mehta began to work on ways to use the strategy in Spider's projects in India. By November, the plan was presented to the CEO. Just 1 month later, agents in Cochin initiated field tests. Jim entered the music room at West Side High at 3:30 on Tuesday, November 1. To reach the man talking to the student on the far side of the room, he had to maneuver past a couple of tripod music stands and a tuba left carelessly on the floor. Jim waited patiently until the student had departed. "You must be Jim Stevens," said the teacher. "Yes, I am. Thank you, Mr. Nielsen, for seeing me." "Call me Roy." "Okay, Roy, I'm Jim. I've come to request a big favor." "Have a seat." The 2 men sat down. "As I told you on the phone, I run an orphanage. We have 37 children of different ages, races, and backgrounds. I'd like to get all of them adopted by good families. In order for this to happen, people have to see the kids and want to take them. Recently, I got the idea that we could form a choir and sing at churches or public affairs. With Christmas just around the corner, we could get a lot of exposure singing carols. What I'd like you to do is to help us get started, at least until Christmas. I don't know anything about music. On my staff, no one is really prepared to do the job. The only person even remotely qualified is a lady who sang in a church choir years ago. She's willing to serve as a second in command, but reluctant to assume a leadership role. You're asking a lot. I don't deny it, but you wouldn't have to work long hours, and I'll pay you for what you do. How about 1 2-hour session a week? Bessie, that's the woman I was talking about, could fill in the rest of the time. I'll need to think about this, and I'll need to talk to my wife. Where is the orphanage located? Well, less than 2 miles from here. I contacted you because you're so close. Here's my card. Please let me know soon. I want our singers ready for the holidays. I'll email you on Friday. Thanks. Tom, I want to talk to you for a moment, said Helen one evening after dinner. Okay. They went into their bedroom and shut the door. The boys were watching TV in the family room. I don't like what's happening to our family. Ben and Paul keep misbehaving, and now Ben is demanding to have the latest cell phone. Our sons are terribly selfish. Where are their values? And you don't seem to be around much anymore to help. You spend more and more hours at the office. When was the last time you attended services at the temple? The boys have started asking why they should attend when you don't. Yes, I know. It's just that my job is placing pretty big demands on me right now. You're right about the boys. I'm concerned too, but I don't know what to do. Frankly, it's almost impossible for me to manage all alone. You need to get your priorities straight. Do you exist in order for the job to go right? Or is the job a means for you to live right? You don't understand. My work is very important. It affects the lives of thousands of, maybe millions of people. Besides, there's more at stake than you realize. There's something you're not telling me. For the last couple of months, I've had that feeling. You're right, there is. But I honestly can't say anything at this time. Just trust that I'm trying to do what's best for us. I promise to give more thought to the boys. Okay, Tom. Helen put a hand on Tom's shoulders as she kissed his cheek. At this point, I'm going to end our story. This is the end of part 1. I trust you find the situation interesting. 2 industrious men of sterling character vying with one another for $1 million offered by the mysterious Mr. Peters. Tune in on June 15th for the conclusion of this story. In the interim, you can decide who will win, Jim or Tom. Thanks for watching Dramas, Dreams, and Drollery.